Welcome to LVT-SHOWBIZ, the place to get the fastest, highest quality, most interesting updates and new perspectives on Chinese entertainment.
What if the love story you thought was just good acting turned out to be something much deeper? What if all those glances, those quiet smiles, those tiny moments you replayed 1,000 times were not coincidences at all, but the beginning of a confession that took years to find its voice? Tonight, on LVT-SHOWBIZ, we are not just talking about rumors, ships or fan cams. We are talking about what it means when two people like Chen Zheyuan and Li Qin finally dare to describe, in words, something their hearts have been quietly protecting for a very long time. Stay with me, because this is not only about them. It is also about you, about me, and about anyone who has ever been afraid to say, "I feel more than I dare to admit." Behind every polished appearance in the entertainment world, there is a quieter reality, two people learning how to exist beside each other while the whole world watches. That is why this kind of confession feels different. It is not presented as a headline designed to shock, but as a moment that seems to rise naturally from everything that came before it. Audiences are drawn in because the story is built on small, believable truths. The pause before a smile, the softening of a gaze, the comfort of silence that does not need explaining. What makes viewers lean closer is the sense that the warmth between them cannot be manufactured on command. It feels less like a performance and more like the accidental exposure of something real. In a culture where public figures are expected to be flawless, the idea of emotional honesty becomes strangely powerful. People do not only watch because they want romance. They watch because they recognize the courage it takes to be sincere when sincerity can be misunderstood, criticized, or turned into noise. In that way, the confession becomes bigger than celebrity. It becomes a rare permission slip, proof that tenderness can survive pressure, and that the softest truths can still make the loudest impact. Some love stories are written in fireworks. This one is written in patience. The emotional pull comes from how slowly the feeling is allowed to grow, as if both people are discovering it at the same pace. Quiet love does not demand an audience. It gathers meaning through repetition, through ordinary moments that begin to feel sacred. A shared joke that lingers after the camera's cut. A small check-in after a long day. The steady presence of someone who does not ask you to be stronger than you are. That is why viewers find it so compelling. Many people are tired of romance that is loud but unstable, dramatic but fragile. A love that grows quietly suggests something rarer, trust. It implies that the bond did not appear because it was convenient, but because it was earned. And when a relationship is built in silence, the silence itself becomes intimate. There is also a deeper comfort here. This kind of story reminds the audience that affection does not have to be rushed to be real. It can take time to become undeniable. It can arrive gently, then stay. In a world addicted to instant conclusions, a slow-growing love feels like a quiet rebellion, and that is exactly why it resonates. There is a particular kind of tension that appears when someone tries to speak a truth they have been holding for too long. The heart may know first, but language is slower. It hesitates. It searches for safety. That is what makes this part so affecting. The confession is not just about love, but about finally giving shape to something that has lived in the shadows of restraint. When Chen Zheyuan is framed as admitting his feelings, the moment feels human rather than heroic. It is not a speech made to impress. It is a careful unveiling. He is not claiming certainty as a performance, he is admitting vulnerability as a choice. And that is where the audience feels it most. Because real confessions are rarely dramatic. They are trembling, quiet, and honest. They carry the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of changing the relationship forever, and the fear of hearing silence in return. Yet the beauty is that the words do arrive. Not perfectly, but sincerely. They arrive like a door opening after years of being locked from the inside. Viewers often react emotionally because they recognize this moment in their own lives. The instant when you stop protecting yourself with distance and instead tell the truth, even if the truth leaves you exposed. That is not spectacle. That is courage. Her perspective adds depth because it reveals a different form of strength. Li Qin is portrayed not as someone who rushes towards love, but as someone who has tried to be careful with it, not because she lacks feelings, but because she understands the cost of being seen. For women in the public eye, emotion is often treated as evidence, and tenderness is too easily weaponized. So her hesitation becomes meaningful. It shows awareness, self-protection, and maturity. But the most powerful part is that softness does not cancel bravery, it refines it. When she speaks, the emotion feels less like a performance and more like a release. It is the voice of someone who has been carrying a truth quietly, telling herself it might be temporary, telling herself not to hope too much. And yet, every attempt to step away only proves how deeply the feeling has already taken root. The line, "He is the place I come home to," works not because it is poetic, but because it captures something universal. Home is not a person who saves you. Home is a person who makes you feel safe enough to be yourself. That is why audiences respond so strongly. Her confession suggests a love built on calm, not chaos, on care, not control. In a world that often celebrates intensity, her softness becomes its own kind of revolution. Most stories treat the confession as the finish line. But in real life, the confession is only the beginning, the moment you decide to live with your truth, not just feel it. That is where the new angles become meaningful, because the most interesting question is not did they confess, but what kind of love do they choose after the words are spoken. A mature love is not measured by public gestures. It is measured by how two people protect each other from noise without becoming imprisoned by it. It is measured by boundaries. Choosing privacy when the world demands access, choosing rest when the industry demands constant visibility. It is measured by consistency, showing up in small ways, not just dramatic ones. From a fresh storytelling perspective, the most touching after is not a glamorous public moment, but a quiet shared life that remains steady. Perhaps they keep supporting each other's work without turning affection into promotion. Perhaps they become more intentional with kindness, giving credit, offering comfort, refusing to let stress become cruelty. Perhaps they choose purpose together as well as romance, backing charitable causes, advocating for well-being, using their influence to soften the world rather than dominate it. This is what modern audiences long for. Love that grows into something stable and ethical, not just exciting. A confession becomes powerful when it is followed by a relationship that honors the truth it promised. At its deepest level, this story is not really about celebrities. It is about the human hunger for sincerity. People watch because the narrative offers something rare. Emotional honesty without humiliation, vulnerability without chaos. It shows two people acknowledging fear while still choosing connection. And that is a mirror many viewers recognize, even if they have never lived under a spotlight. What the story whispers is simple but profound. You are allowed to be soft. You are allowed to take your time. You are allowed to want a love that feels safe rather than dramatic. For anyone who has ever silenced their feelings to avoid judgment, this kind of confession can feel like permission. It suggests that love is not only real when it is loud, love can be real when it is careful, when it is patient, when it is spoken gently and still held firmly. There is also a quiet hope embedded in the narrative. It reminds people that tenderness is not naive, and that trust can still be built in a world that often rewards suspicion. Even if the audience treats the story as romantic storytelling rather than confirmed reality, the emotional truth still lands. Because what viewers ultimately take away is not a name or a label, but a feeling, the belief that two hearts can find each other without rushing, without pretending, and without being ashamed of how deeply they care.